You don't have to be a millennial to be socially savvy. We believe anyone can join Generation Social Media, and your journey starts now. This is the Generation Social Media Podcast by Chatterkick.
Welcome back. We are back with our two-part legal series with Gina Goosmann of Goosmann Law Firm, and she is an author, speaker. We're so excited to have her. Our first podcast was really about web accessibility. Today, we're going to talk about copyrights and how you find images for social media and can you use them. So we're really excited to talk to you today, Gina. So welcome to this show.
Well, thanks for having me back, Beth. I'm really excited to be on again and looking forward to talking more about copyrights and how people can make sure that they're safe when they make designs.
Yeah, and so if you haven't listened to the first part of this series, definitely go back and check that one out. Today, we're really talking about images and photos. And I think, being a social media agency, that's one of the questions that we do hear a lot from our clients is just, where do I get the images, right? We always recommend taking the photos, but sometimes that's not always an option. So let's say that our clients or businesses need to use an image. That content is typically protected in some way or another, but how do you know what you can use as a business owner specifically?
Well, this is a real big danger zone, quite frankly, and we regularly get letters where people are violating others' copyright and they've got an image on their site that they didn't know was protected that somebody else is claiming rights to. And as a result, they now want to get paid damages for the length of time that you've had that up on their site. And so it's a real issue. And I think the best way to know that you're safe in using these, first, obviously, create your own content,
right.
Take your own pictures.
Right?
That's the easiest. But otherwise, there are sites that you can pay and have access and get the licensing for those images. And I think if you go to one of those sites, that's probably your safest bet because then they're giving you some assurance and you're getting some licensing with that.
Right. And so let's talk about the absolutely do not do, where I see all the time like offenders. And I just want to make sure that, we hear it from you as well. Just Google image searching something, right? You just Google image search a car, right? And you click the images and all these cars come up and you want to have a picture of a car. Is that something businesses should do? Or like what's the risk that they're putting themselves at?
That is not something that they should do because I think there's a company that has figured this out where if there are people that will just Google image car and their images come up first. And those are the companies that are sending those demand letters that say, I want to be paid for my licensing. So they have figured this out, that people are just Google imaging things and then you pull their image and use it and boom, they send you a demand because they have figured out that that's what people want to do. You also do not want to just go on Facebook and use people's private,
right?
Because you're violating the Facebook rules.
Yep.
Say you can't do this for commercial purposes. You don't just want to go on Instagram and steal other people's pictures. You want to make sure that you're getting them from a legitimate source. And I think the best way to do that is to use one of those sites that I'm sure you could rattle off for everybody.
Yeah.
But you can make sure that the images that you're buying, and they're not very expensive either. I think they have a pretty low fee, but through that you're getting licensing.
Right. And do you feel like there is such thing as a royalty-free or a Creative Commons license? I know that a lot of the kind of lower cost stock photo sites have that availability.
So there is such thing that's called public domain, which would be royalty-free. And there's also the fair use doctrine, which is a very complex legal doctrine. And we don't have time to get into that. It would be like a whole law school class in and of itself. We would bore all of your people here. But so those things do exist. But I think there are so many exceptions that the copyright information, you should just assume if you're using it for commercial purposes that you're not going to fall under the fair use doctrine. And as a result, I would not recommend trying to rely on those doctrines. That is probably beyond the scope of what you're trying to do if it's for your business.
Right. And I think that a lot of people don't understand how easy it is to find the image on your website that you used, right? There's a reverse Google image search is like a basic tool, but there's lots of other ones out there. But you literally can upload an image into Google and say, where else on the internet is this image found? And so obviously these companies are being able to find where those images are very easily.
There are, and they have full staffs of people that's their job is to go find the violations because they also employ legal departments that's those lawyers' job to send out these demand letters because they make a lot of money by people just using their images.
Right. And small businesses, medium size, doesn't really matter. Industry, it's anybody that has images, right? And your website's probably going to have pictures on it.
Absolutely.
So,
and I've seen a lot of small businesses be targeted with this. And this has been going on for decades too, by the way. And it's still going on today. So people, stop using these images.
right. You are making your lives more difficult to just by like randomly grabbing the latest image that you find. I think a lot of people just think, well, I'm not going to get caught, right?
We probably get one a week.
That's crazy.
Right? I mean, that's how prevalent it is. And we're based in Iowa, Nebraska, and South Dakota.
Right.
We have 30 lawyers, and we probably get at least one a week. So
yeah, definitely.
It's a real issue.
Right? And I think that people also need to think about on the social sites, right? So tell me a little bit about user-generated content, right? We deal with that a lot in social media. And it, in many cases, is public content with quotations. What are the best practices or legal rules that you guys see with user-generated content, or UGC as we lovingly call it?
So I think when you have this sort of content, this is going to get us back over to our privacy policy
Right.
a little bit. You want to make sure that you're addressing these issues in your privacy policy. So if you're going to be reusing user-generated content, you want to make sure that people know that you have licensing and you plan to reuse this content.
Right.
We get this asked a lot too when it comes to those recommendations that people are posting. Can I pull the recommendation off of the social site and post it over on my website? And I think that's when you want to make sure that your policies that you have on your sites are allowing that.
Right. And do you feel like, is it helpful if there's documentation of that, let's say, transfer of copyright? So if you ask somebody, can I use your image? And they say, sure, you can. Would you want to screenshot that kind of, or document that somewhere so that if you ever did have somebody come back to you and there'd be a plan at least of how that copyright may be transferred?
Absolutely. So document, right? It's like a lawyer's best friend. And be careful what you document too. I always say the reverse of that.
Right.
So don't send text messages or emails you don't want to be Exhibit A.
Right.
So if you get one of these requests of stop using my content, be careful how you respond as well. But I think that asking permission is always the best course, because if you're given permission, that is the number one defense to a claim saying that I don't want you to have that up on there. And then if later also somebody does come back and request, I want you to take this down for whatever reason, I think it's always a good idea too to be respectful of that.
Right.
And if you're not, then you could run into an issue later because did they revoke permission?
Right. I think that's really, a lot of people's, especially photographers, they just want the credit. So like sometimes just having that conversation before you just steal somebody's image is like the best case scenario. And sometimes people are willing to let you use their images if you just give them credit and you kind of showcase them. Just that conversation is a really good spot to start that dialogue of, okay, whose image is this? How are we giving this person credit? And I mean, if you're in marketing or, you guys your business is documenting and sharing images, this is kind of a thing you need to know, right? Like it's not just something that you throw on the intern.
It's not. And especially too, if there's images of people and potentially images of children.
Right.
Because if you're getting into where if they're 13 or under, that's like a danger zone. And you want to make sure then you have parent permission. There's all kinds of issues where people have, custody battles out there and don't necessarily want their images of their children out on social or the internet. And so you need to be careful, especially when you're dealing with pictures of people.
Right. And or probably if you're in business or an industry that it's maybe a little bit more sensitive, right? Like healthcare, like you said, childcare, or there's lots of other probably other like HIPAA stuff that kind of comes into play with images itself. So definitely something to be cautious of and really understand what rights and rules your business needs to kind of comply to.
Absolutely. So if you're on a potentially controversial topic with your business and then you posted somebody's image on there, I think that they might have a defamation or a slander claim because you've put their image associated with that. So in addition to the actual rights of who took the picture, you're opening yourself up to a whole nother bunch of issues that you don't really anticipate that you're going to be having to deal with, right?
Right.
And that can happen too if people even just comment on your content and all of a sudden you've brought somebody into an area that they weren't anticipating and now they want to point the finger back at you.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit when you the influencer world, right? The FTC has done a little bit of clarification about sponsored content. If you're on Instagram and you're looking at those influencers, you may see ad or hashtag sponsored. What is the best practice? And can you tell us more about what you're seeing specifically on that, like disclosure, and what are the rules?
Yeah, so this is an ever-changing area, I think, and something that people are just now getting in touch with, because there are also, it's driving the whole area where we're getting more counterfeits, because the influencers have so much impact, right? And so there's a ripple effect when people are influencing a brand and creating demand in this area. So I think that, first of all, you want to have permission before they go down that path. And then second, as we're looking at these FTC rules and guidelines for sponsored content, it's important to make sure that you're disclosing things. And what kind of disclosures do you need to give if there's compensation or remuneration going back and forth between why you're promoting something versus is it just naturally, like, I'm a huge fan of XYZ product, but I'm not a designated influencer and I'm not being paid to promote something here today. And at some point in time, I think those influencers themselves need to make sure that they're aware of what the laws are. Right. And then the marketers that are hiring them too, because that's a slippery slope. If you're hiring somebody and you know that they're violating the law, you don't want to be somebody else that they could come back and say is violating an issue.
That's what I was wondering, especially, like, again, I'm kind of putting this on the local level. So on that local kind of playing field, the business then also needs to kind of work with whoever they're providing the product to or giving free swag to, because it's a little bit on them. Is that kind of what you're saying, or definitely a cautious standpoint that you need to kind of take?
Yes, I think so, because if you know that they're not doing the right disclosures and complying, I think it is a little on you, and you could be held responsible as a result of that. But again, a lot of this is dealing with Instagram and a lot of new regulations. So I would definitely be cautious there. We haven't seen a lot of cases come down in this regard yet, but it is a new area, and you want to make sure that you're not misleading the public or misleading consumers, because that's really what the government and people are concerned about, is that you're misrepresenting, and they're going to be basing their own decisions on something that's really false.
Right. I think there's so many people out there, especially young people, that just want to be influencers. And I think it is important that they know that the second that they're taking something and, you know, pushing it out there to people, like, it kind of is a business at that point, and you need to make sure that your risks are analyzed and you kind of have a heads up on at least what your responsibilities are. And sometimes they probably are as simple as putting hashtag ad, hashtag sponsored content, but you don't want to get yourself too far in trouble when you're young and, you know, just trying to start everything up.
Exactly. So all of a sudden, once you're being paid to play, right? And once you cross that divide, I think it's important to realize what your responsibilities are and make sure you're using the right hashtags and you're not misleading your followers. And they'll appreciate that too.
Right. Okay, last topic. Let's talk a little bit, I mean, illegal or unethical, right? There's definitely some lines to this, but what about like fake reviews on social, or like brands that buy reviews or likes on social media? Is that more of an unethical practice, or is there actually some legal implications for people?
I think when it comes to that, whether there's going to be legal implications, it might depend upon what their area of business is. So I think if you are in the financial institution world and then you're doing that, there's going to be all kinds of regulations that you will have violated. Similar with legal. Lawyers are highly regulated on what they can do with advertising. I think the same would be true in the medical profession. So whether it actually crosses into being illegal or not, I think it will depend on what kind of content it is. If you're just promoting makeup, for example, it might not be illegal, but you're probably in the unethical category, right? And that people are going to get to know, is this a brand that they can trust? And I think right now there is so much counterfeit product out there and fake this and fake that people are really looking for, what can we trust online? And if you're tarnishing your reputation because you're doing unethical things, I think the consumer is becoming really savvy and you're going to get called out on it.
Oh, 100%. It's so interesting too. You know, even when you're just kind of searching on different products, you can so spot the fakes. It's like 2 goods, 1 bad, 2 goods, 1 bad. And it's like, okay, these are all not real reviews because they're just playing the game of trying to change your mindset and not really giving you feedback on the product or the service. And I think that people can see right through that, right? It's such an easy target to be like, okay. And I think that sways the opposite direction of trust, like you mentioned.
And isn't it the same with, I mean, you could buy followers on Twitter too. And all of a sudden now people are like, well, who can you really engage with?
Right.
Because if you have a high number of followers, but you have low engagement, the brands don't really care and they don't really think you're an influencer.
Right, exactly. It's kind of like...
too good to be true.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you so much. We really appreciate such great information. I think that just the ideas and things that we want to get people thinking about, like watching your images, best is take your own, use the content that you create. If you need to use stock photos, use it from a reputable site. And there's probably going to be some sort of a fee involved because you're transferring that copyright. And then just with the influencer space and, even just reviews, be authentic, make sure you know the rules specifically within your category. And hopefully our brands and influencers will be off to a great start.
Thank you, Beth.
All right. Thanks so much.